humans driving is actually more dangerous than AIs or, autonomous vehicles, I think it's going to be very interesting because so many industries would be disrupted. When you're driving, you're on the ground. When you start to take that vehicle into the air, now you add an extra element of danger to it.
Think about it this way. No one wants to take their car to service, but you get home from work at 7:00, right? And guess what? You put your car in service mode, and then that bad boy at 2 a.m. or whatever, at 8:00 at night, backs itself out, drives itself to the dealer, and that thing gets serviced overnight. And then guess what? You wake up to go to work at 8:00 tomorrow morning, and your car's back in the driveway serviced. The most important thing to people who have a lot of money is time, and they're just figuring out ways to buy more time. That buys me time. So I think that's kind of really the direction that it'll go in first. Further underscores the point to me that you can make more money coming out of trade school today than a college graduate. So I think it's a good time to be in trades. I think right now trades are going to have a huge resurgence, and additionally, you won't see that balance back out again until you see advanced robotics or advanced humanoid.
We've been conditioned to believe that information was the way to go. So white collar jobs, but there'll be still white collar jobs. Like I don't think that humanoid could ever take the job of a lawyer. I don't think that they could ever take the job of, a great surgeon.
I think the only thing the global economy cares about is whether or not America can continue to pay the bill. I don't think it cares about the well-being. Come on.
Stop it, Chris.
I think you could send a courtesy letter to the estimated 700,000 people that have lost their jobs since NAFTA came out about. And look, if the government was in charge of running the Sahara Desert, they would run out of sand. They would. They would, because anytime the government comes in,
no disagreement
it sucks.
There, brother.
It sucks. We talked about this, Lynn. There's a cliche that's now been formed. And the cliche is this. Gen X says it's all about money. Millennials say, where is the money? And Gen Z goes, what is money? Right? Because they have none. Right? So, and it's true. Everybody said, oh, these young generations are so materialistic and all this. No, baby boomers aren't.
I think you are definitely bitter. I think to blame the baby boomers is a little bit short-sighted. I agree that politicians are a problem, but it's not just the left. It's both sides, bro. You can't tell me.
You know what I wish would happen? You know how you go into like a Catholic home or a Christian, or mostly a Catholic home, and you see like the Last Supper? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or a crucifix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every baby boomer should have a shrine of Ronald Reagan in their house. Because if without Ronald, and then Ronald Reagan comes in and says, look, guys, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be terrible. We're going to make these changes. You're not going to like it. It's going to be a lot of pain. However, let me tell you something. It's morning again.
Welcome to the Family Office. Planning for the people who matter most.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Family Office Podcast. I'm Len Cooper, and I have my co-host here, Chris Philp. We are definitely excited about today's conversations that we're going to have. We're going to be talking about everything from RoboTaxis to bad breath, and a few other things in between. And so if those are topics that you are interested in, definitely stick around. But we also have some other topics that I didn't mention right now. And so we're going to be talking about health, finances, and current events. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So how's it going today, Chris?
It's going really good. Labor Day weekend, always a fun time. I know we were having a conversation about holiday weekends, I think last week or over the weekend or something to that effect. We were just talking about it's not normal to have 3 days off for me, and I'm not used to that. So it was pretty cool though. I had a lot of fun. I always enjoy the time with the kids and just kind of really exploring that and understanding that. The biggest nerve-wracking thing for me, and we've had multiple conversations about this, is just understanding, the transitions that you have in life and making those smooth transitions. And obviously for me, I'm in a massive transition in my life right now. And there was a lot that I did, or a lot that was around me that it's not there anymore. And it's like, wow. And it just kind of really underscores and emphasizes the point of why you really ought to be focused on constant development. And I was listening to a psychologist. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a psychologist on there, and they were talking about relationships. There's like why marriages grow apart or why people grow apart. And all kind of, she was basically, her premise is that in a relationship, there are those who don't want anything to change. Oh, they just want it to stay the same. And then there are those who work constructively and look forward to changing, right? And becoming new people together. And that's where the disconnect comes from, because either both don't want to change, or one wants to and one doesn't. And that's where that friction creates. And you go, oh, we just grew apart. It isn't that they just grew apart. It's that one person didn't want to change and the other did. And the reality behind that is that you are constantly changing biologically. You and I are constantly changing physically, and we're changing mentally. And if you don't have a change mindset or a growth mindset or anything like that, it's going to be very difficult for you to maintain a healthy relationship with somebody long-term, albeit a healthy relationship with yourself, right? It's kind of almost like when you see people and you're like, oh my God, they got older, they got crazy, or they got paranoid, or they got this. And it's like, that's why, because they're in this world now where they're still mentally their old self and they don't know how to live in the world we are today. So I think Volcom coined it at one point on their t-shirts. If you remember that brand, it was all change is the only constant. So good things are happening. Yep. School is great. I think the kids are finally balancing out in school, and it's just been it's been crazy though. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. How about you, sir?
So my son, Akil, is visiting from New York. And so he's been out here for a few days, and he had a few days off, and then he's now working. And so yesterday on Labor Day, we took some time and went to the movies together and watched Fantastic Four. And it's a pretty good movie. I was actually surprised, because Marvel does a really good job of tying in adult themes and children's themes and melding them together so it can be a family event where it's not just the parents, they're bored and the kids are loving it, or vice versa. And so I really enjoyed the movie, and just spending some time with my wife and my son, just hanging out again, even though he's an adult. It was a very cool thing. And so, when you talk about relationships, my wife and I love the fact that we can send our kids off to college and still have a life and still build together and still grow together and still love each other and still like each other, and being able to be each other's best friends, I think is really a treat, man, because oftentimes what happens, to your point, is that as people begin to grow and shift or stay stagnant and the other one does something differently, then that relationship starts to drift apart. And it's so subtle and it's so slow. And then, all of a sudden you find yourselves miles apart, ready for a divorce. And that's what ends up happening more often than not. So, so I really say all of that to say that in any type of relationship, it's so, so important to both have a growth mindset. And, sometimes the other person may not be where you are, but it's also important to just, instead of nagging them to change, just show them the positive impact of change on yourself. And I think that makes a significant difference. And that's really what's helped my wife and I stay so close over all these years and still be connected. So,
well, I didn't go to Fantastic Four, but I did see the movie with Brad Pitt, the F1 movie, and that was pretty awesome.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'd have to go see that. That would be a great movie to see in 4DX, where you've got all of the, have you ever been to one of those movie theaters before?
I have never been to one of those. Oh,
brother, you have to do this. Okay. So it's called 4DX. And so if it's snowing, you can, like snow will fall inside of the movie theater, or if you're making a turn or going over some type of bump, your chair moves along with it. And it'll even, if you can elect to even have water squirt in your face in different appropriate scenes. It's the coolest experience. You definitely want to do it. And the cool thing is that a lot of times, a roller coaster will be over in a minute or two. You've got a 2-hour movie that you can experience. So absolutely, definitely you want to do that for sure.
Interesting. No, I've never heard that. I did go on this thing in Vegas, not last year. Was it last year? 2024. Yeah. I did go to this thing in Vegas in 2024, and it's like, it was cinematic 4Ks or 8K views of like the pyramids, like, nature scenes. And as you're going through it, you're actually flying in this dome, and it does that effect in the water spray, but not obviously a movie, not a feature length film or anything like that. So,
yeah. It's that concept, but through a feature length film. And of course, you don't have the same degree of movement. It's just your chair, but you still get the same effect, especially like a movie like Formula F1. That would be a great movie. So I went to go see Maverick in 4DX. It was amazing. Yeah, it was
with
great.
Mel Gibson.
Very cool.
Maverick with Mel Gibson.
With Tom Cruise.
Oh, okay.
The movie was sick. It was sick, man. So you definitely look up 4DX theaters. So,
well, I want to see Jaws. That's the one I saw. I want to see Jaws in 4DX.
50-year anniversary. Huh?
Yes, but if you do get a chance to go see, and I can imagine to your point, the 4DX. If you get a chance to see the F1 movie, I haven't seen a movie in a long time where your heart starts like, oh my God. Like, and it wasn't so much that it's like exciting, but because the scene and how they portrayed, him winning and him accomplishment and that kind of deal. So yeah, it definitely is a man movie. I think, not to be sexist or anything like that. I'm not going to apologize if I am being sexist, because
right.
I don't. I mean, you don't care about my feelings. I'm not going to care about your feelings. But at the same time, You know what I mean? It's definitely a good movie.
A perfect segue, man, into our conversation about cars, man. So I want to get your thoughts. So check this out. So the future of driving is up for grabs. As you know, you've got Tesla on the one hand and you've got Waymo on the other hand, and both of them have differing types of technologies. And so, man, I'm very curious, considering the fact that you went to go see F1, and, obviously it's a different type of car, but what are your thoughts about Waymo versus Tesla?
Well, this has been coming for a long time. I remember 20, 30 years ago, I might have to say more than that now. I might have to say, 30 years ago, not 20 years ago, when it was like, we're going to have flying cars in the year 2000, because 20 years ago, I'm still 20, right? Or 22 or 23 or something like that, right? But I remember that, and you probably remember that too, where it was like, we're going to have flying cars by the year 2000, and it's going to be like the Jetsons and all this stuff. But the reality is it never happened that way, right? It hasn't happened that way. And we could talk about really the various political reasons on why that happened. Big oil, all that stuff. Energy is the biggest issue the energy production and creation is the biggest issue that we face, I believe, and most people most educated or informed people would say human beings or civilization is facing is production of energy, right? And possibly, quite possibly clean water, but that gets solved with energy production. But realistically, it's been up for grabs for a long time. And I think that, and this has been my thought for a while, is that I think that gas powered cars are not going to go away for quite some time. But I think just as a technology, that is a very legacy technology at this point. It's definitely going to go away. You see a lot of high tech, like F1, there's a lot of battery and a lot of electrification there. So I definitely think that that's going in the right direction. Elon Musk has said that, and I'm not an electric vehicle fan. I've driven all of them. I've driven electric BMW. I've driven electric Mercedes, Tesla, all of them. I'm actually going to go test drive a Rivian because I want a truck and a pickup truck. And I think that's the best way for me to get a pickup truck is to get an electric one. Have you seen those? I think they're pretty sick.
They're very nice looking.
Very nice, right? So I'm like, that could be a segue for me, but I definitely think gas powered cars will eventually become nostalgia. It'll become, or not nostalgia, but it'll become a premium. Like it will flip in a way that if you have a gas powered car, you're wealthy or you're well off. In order for you to have a gas powered car, you have to have a lot of money. And I think electric cars, as that technology comes down, and we figure out how to make it affordable, as technology obviously comes out more, it gets more affordable. Then at that point, it becomes adopted, and things happen that way. But in regards to RoboTaxis and how that works, it's interesting, Len, because have you seen or have you read the differences in how? Because it's really two competitors. It's Waymo and Tesla. And have you seen
the two big dogs for sure?
Right. Have you seen the two different strategies? Have you seen that? Because they each have different
I'm
approaches
vaguely
to it.
familiar. Yeah, one with the lidar and the radar versus, for safety, and Tesla's more dynamic, but you can definitely go more in depth than I can on that for sure.
So interestingly enough, let me see here. Interesting enough, what happened is that Waymo is using a very complex strategy behind it. They're mapping the roads. Obviously, it's Google, right? Alphabet. So they have access to a lot of map data. I mean, they've been doing it for a very long time. Google Maps has been around forever. So they're mapping the roads, they're data in the roads, they're looking at this, and they're pre-programming that so that the car understands the road already that it's going to be on, right? So they're looking at that. And then obviously with the cars, there's LiDAR sensors, radar sensors, and all those things. Whereas when you look at Tesla, and everybody that knows Tesla is actually really a data company. It's a technology company. It's not a car company. I mean, that's just kind of like the way to, it's like Elon Musk's genius way to raise capital, right? But what's happening here is with Tesla is that they're employing a technology base that's very similar to how you and I drive, how humans drive. And that cameras, real-time cameras, high definition, obviously the road sensors are there, but that's the main thing. So if you look at it, it's like computer-driven versus more human-driven. And that's really the difference. If I was to guess it and put my finger on it, I would probably be more in favor of Tesla's strategy, simply because you could scale it faster, you could deploy it faster, and I think that road conditions change so fast that you need human element and human nuance in there, and I think that AI capabilities and computer capabilities are simply just not there. And I'll give you an example. You have been in my car. I think you were last time you were here. Mm-hmm. And that thing has like one of the most advanced autonomous driving technologies. In fact, if I was in California, it would be allowed to drive itself in certain areas now. You guys have that, right? The problem, though, is that I use it a lot. The problem, though, is that it makes mistakes. And there have been some times where if I wasn't paying attention to that thing, I was like, what are you thinking? Like, what are you, right. You're just like, what is this thing thinking right now? And I think that has a lot to do with, there's just so much unpredictability that happens when you're on the road. I just can't leave it in the hands of that. I would much rather have a very highly developed AI model that's been, and who knows, maybe Elon Musk's teaching this software based on all the camera footage that they've gotten from self-driving and autonomous stuff that Teslas have here. So I think at this point, Tesla's probably going to have the better the technology, and I think that they're going to run away with it. But I definitely think that if Google doesn't figure out, Google has a big moat right now, right? I mean, Alphabet has a massive moat, but whoever figures out a high functioning AI model, right? Or that next level of AI, I can't remember the name of it's called. Whoever figures that out first is really the winner, I think, because that is really what it's going to take. You need as much human nuance as you possibly can, because there are certain things that when you drive a lot, and you go, yeah, if you're an experienced driver, And I don't think the computer can figure that out. And I think Tesla has it because the computer's already looking how humans drive on the road, just because Tesla's been driving with that tech forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Where my mind goes when we talk about this topic is, I wonder how Uber is looking at these developments, and Lyft and Yellow Taxi and every single truck driving company that's out there, because if autonomous vehicles actually become something that actually works and has been proven, because no matter what, there's lots and lots of accidents, and studies show that most of those accidents are human error. And so if we can find a way to reduce and eliminate that, and really create case studies where it's empirically discovered that humans driving is actually more dangerous than AIs or, autonomous vehicles, I think it's going to be very interesting, because so many industries would be disrupted. And so I don't know, man. I think that if I'm Uber, I'm really trying to make sure that they're not going to make the same amount of progress, or I start to create an exit strategy, because it's just a matter of time, I believe, before AI takes over. I think what'll happen is that this generation of baby boomers and their parents probably need to pass away. So I think in another 10 to 20 years, I think AI will take over driving, and I think autonomous vehicles will just become something that's the norm. And so babies right now, they don't know any different. And so I think by the time they're 16, 17, and 18 years old, I think the driving scene is going to look completely different. Earlier, you talked about the Jetsons and the fact that there may be flying cars and all of the projections with flying cars and all of those things. I think one of the biggest issues and the reasons why it hasn't really taken place, besides what you mentioned, is also the safety factor. Because, when you're driving, you're on the ground. When you start to take that vehicle into the air, now you add an extra element of danger to it. And I just think we're too squeamish about the idea of getting into a vehicle. And even if you're 30, 40, 50 feet off the ground, that adds a whole another degree of complexity as it relates to safety. So I'm very interested to see how time begins to unfold. But I think driving industries are in a severe world of hurt in the next 10 to 20 years.
I'm just surprised that Uber obviously, and maybe their business model or their business plan shot them in the foot, because Uber was all based on arbitrage, right? I mean, we don't have a fleet. We're using everyone else's cars. So they don't really have an asset to flip into. For me, if I'm Uber, I would be thinking of some type of way, and I don't know, maybe the software, maybe their technology could be bought or purchased, or look, if they don't develop something at this point, Uber is going to get bought. Like Uber would get bought by a Google or a Tesla, or maybe even Apple, right? If they step into the game. But I think that you're reaching that point where you might see something like that happen. But the problem I see, though, is that if self-driving cars are available today, I would not want to only be restricted to the fact that I have to get a RoboTaxi, or you get what I'm saying? Yes, I want to drive my car. I'm a driver. I agree. I'm a driver. 100%. I'm a driver. Mm-hmm. And I think you are too.
Absolutely. I would not feel comfortable getting into a car where I don't have the ability. Like I even have cruise control in my car, as we all do. How many times out of 100 do you use cruise control, even when you're on the open range?
I only use cruise control if I'm driving. Like, for example, the last time I used cruise control was when I drove to Arizona. That's a 20.
You're driving cross country.
Yeah, it's like an 18-hour drive, right? So that I'll use it for. But alternately, no, I wouldn't. And like I said, I have the cruise control that will stop on its own, change lanes on its own. To me, it's like I want to drive. I want to drive the car. So where I think it makes the most sense, and this is the irony of it, is it makes the most sense in the ride-hailing sector, like Uber.
It does.
So to me, it's almost like, what good is Uber? They don't have assets to buy, so they have a good technology, so we don't have to reinvent the hailing technology, the mapping and location technology. We just have to put that in our RoboTaxi. So take Uber's, IP, buy it from them, deploy it so that we don't have to do that into, our RoboTaxis, like for example, Waymo or Tesla. And now you can ride hail and you don't have to pay a person to drive it, the car. And I know that looks like, oh crap, because there's like 400,000 rideshare just in LA or California. Oh, yeah. There's like 400,000 rideshare employees or workers or contractors, so to speak, for Uber just in California. So, as much as you want to love California, I mean, they're going to probably be this.
I think the workers are going to be in a world of hurt. And I think also Carvana's been having some issues financially too. And I think that type of a model where you have a vending machine type of a setup would probably take off if drivers were no longer needed for cars, because you need to have a place for all of these cars to be, because, no matter where you go, every single car is not going to be on the road 24 hours a day. You're going to have peaks and valleys in terms of the amount of traffic that flows. And so I just think that there may be an opportunity for them to take advantage and say, hey, listen, we already have the model where you can build up, and we know how this works. You don't have to worry about cars, imploding on each other and all of those things. I think that's another opportunity for them to think about as well.
I think where it also makes the most sense is that your car could have the ability to be in autonomous mode, right? But you could drive it on your own, right? Okay.
Yes.
So kind of almost like there was a movie, or Tom Cruise movie, since you mentioned him earlier, called Minority Report. And if you watch that movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, they have the ability.
Great movie.
You have the ability to drive the car or self-drive the car. And I think it's almost the same as an old movie I want to take you back with Sylvester Stallone called Demolition Man. And you remember that movie? It had Sandra Bullock in it. It was a great movie, right? And you watch that and you go, okay, cool. I think that makes the most sense. And here's why I like it for efficiency. Think about it this way. No one wants to take their car to service. But you get home from work at 7 o'clock, right? And guess what? You put your car in service mode, and then that bad boy at 2 in the morning or whatever, at 8 o'clock at night, backs itself out, drives itself to the dealer, and that thing gets serviced overnight. And then guess what? You wake up to go to work at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and your car's back in the driveway serviced. And they chart, and they guess what? They ping your XRP wallet. Bam! Awesome, right? That to me is where it makes the most sense, because you could alleviate a lot of traffic that way. You could alleviate a lot of unnecessary. I got to go to the dentist. I got to go to this. Or not the dentist. I got to go to the dentist for your car, right? I got to go to this and this and this and this and that. So to me, that's where I would start to see that being more appealing. To me is like, for example, I have to take my car in for service next week. I don't want to do it. I don't want to drive there down there. It's going to take an hour of my life to do that. And I don't want to do it. I could be doing something else. So, and I think that's going to appeal to higher net worth people and more, because the most important thing to people who have a lot of money is time, and they're just figuring out ways to buy more time. That buys me time. So I think that's kind of really the direction it'll go in first.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I agree with you that looking at the automotive industry, looking at the car, taxis, rideshare industry, so many of those industries are going to get disrupted. But I think what will happen, to your point, is that as time goes on, there will be more and more examples of how that type of technology can be used to give us back our time. And as that begins to increase, so will our acceptance of it and our adoption of it too. Because I wouldn't mind allowing my car to go somewhere without me to get serviced, get my tires done, get my engine fixed, get my oil changed. And as I see that happening more successfully over and over, and my car doesn't get wrecked, it gets back, it's been serviced and all of that, then I'm going to say, you know what? I might go down the street to the store and I allow it to drive me around. And you know what? I might go to my cousin's house in the next city over. And then gradually you start to adopt the idea of it. And then more and more people start to adopt that idea. And then that's how it goes from just being a fad to being ubiquitous. So,
I mean, yeah, think about it. You could put it in, going night on the town mode or party mode. And then you come out of the club or the bar and you're trashed and you're going to get in the car and you're in party mode. The car's going to drive you home.
Absolutely.
That to me is the value add. That's the value.
I agree.
Because here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I say you go ahead, Len, because it goes with the AI. So go ahead.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing, is that AI is the common denominator that's creating that value add, which leads us into our next topic, which is this idea of, there's been this idea that plumbers don't add a lot of value to society and all of this, and it's not really a sexy type of a job. But the reality is that it could actually replace a lot of white collar jobs. And, AI is replacing jobs, and it's at a pace that's really becoming unexpected because the technology is being integrated so much faster. And now trade jobs like plumbing are becoming like super high valuable because it's quite difficult to replace. And so I know that you've given some thought about the idea of these blue collar jobs and how schooling will be impacted by that, and how people begin to look at white collar jobs versus blue collar jobs. What are some of your thinking? What is some of your thinking around this topic?
I remember the story, and this is probably the best way that I could illustrate this. I remember 10 years ago, in my line of work, in my business, I would go and sit with people in their homes or their businesses and talk to them about financial services. And for me, I always ask a lot of questions. You know, if you're in sales, you're watching this, you know, the best salespeople ask the most questions, right? And I did that for a very long time. And I had this mentor that always was telling me to use 2 ears, and you have 2 ears and you have 1 mouth. Use them proportionally. I just can't remember where I picked that up from, but I'm sure you know that guy quite well. But and that always stuck with me. And he is a cool guy. He is. He's looking good in his older ages too. So anyways, I always remember that I would sit down with trades guys like mechanics. And anytime I'd sit with them, they would always say, we need trades. The United States of America needs trades. There's not enough people coming out of trade school, mechanics, plumbers, engineers, all the stuff that you look at, in trade school, welding, everything, right? And I said, why do they say this all the time? I didn't pay attention to it. And what I noticed is that as we got closer to where we're at now in time, it's become more prevalent. And now you're starting to see this now. I think Charlie Kirk or somebody was saying it a while ago, or a couple of weeks ago, it was like, go get a trade, go do this, because there are not enough now. Because what we've done is that we've gotten technology eventually made those types of jobs go away, and we told everybody to go to school and get white collar jobs, right? You don't want to work in a trade anymore. There's no money in that. And don't be a carpenter. Don't be a framer, electrician. Don't do any of that stuff, right? And then as a result of that, you saw Americans stop going to trade school, and what they start doing? They started going to campuses, colleges, right? Mm-hmm. I bet if we dive deeper into this, right, there are some funding that came from certain areas to influence this thinking. And now we've gotten ourselves in this situation where people are coming out of college with useless degrees, and they don't know, I can't find a job, right? Or if you do find a job, it's not enough money. I know for me, and just in my personal experience, Len, I did not go to college. I was in a trade as soon as I got out of high school. Actually, I worked my senior year of high school as I was 18. And I was in IT. And as soon as I graduated high school and I got my first job, I was making $84,000 a year in 1999 as an IT person. And I was like, wow, how is this possible? I thought I was so rich, right? I was like, this is great. But it allowed me to buy my first house at age 21 in 2001. So I was like, this is great, right? And that further underscores the point to me that you can make more money coming out of trade school today than a college graduate and find a job. So now what you're seeing with AI is not eliminating blue-collar jobs. AI is eliminating white-collar jobs. Because think about this in the case of an architect. Who needs an architect? When you can have the AI model draw the architectural plans based on you want, and guess what? They can redraw, right? And then guess what? You have all those models to create your whatever architecture you're looking for, and then you hire an architect because now you don't need 10, you only need 1, right? And guess what? That architect's going to review what the AI models drew as the consultant over it, the overseer, the manager. So you're not going to see them totally get eliminated, but you should see the mass of it get eliminated. So I think it's a good time to be in trades. I think it's a great time to have a trade degree. I'm teaching my daughter's learning programming. She's learning development. She's learning AI. I'm getting all my kids ahead of this curve because I don't want them to be behind it. I think right now trades are going to have a huge resurgence, and additionally, you won't see that balance back out again until you see advanced robotics or advanced humanoid, where you have to have the robot or be able to do this, right? Until they can do this, right? It's not going to take that over, and you're far away from that. You're far away from that because the nuance of a human hand and all that stuff, we haven't been able to recreate that in the lab yet and all that stuff. I think what you'll see before you see full-blown robots, I think you'll see hybrid synthetic being. Right, so you'll see like a synthetic body with a humanoid or something to that effect. I don't think you'll see a full mechanical robot like we see in like sci-fi. I think you'll see it like I know we're bringing up old movies today. Remember Alien? And I can't remember the name of the guy, but when he gets cut open, he's got the white stuff that comes out of him. But he was a cyborg, right? He's doing the thing with the knife to Bishop, right? On the yeah. I think that's the direction it's going to go in. I think that's going to go. You're going to see hybridized or biological synthetics. I think is the way it's going. But I think that is going to, trade school is really where it's at right now. I would send my kids to college right now. I'd send them to trade school or start a business in AI.
Yeah, I think that, like we've talked about in other episodes, there's an evolution that happens in the workplace. And the point that I was going to bring up that you really touched on is that we're a long way away from humanoids actually being able to manipulate objects and work with dexterity. And so trade jobs that have a local flavor to it, where I have to physically go to someone's house and service it. I have to physically go to the freeway or the bridge and fix that. I think we're a long way away from mechanical objects taking over that. And I think what happens is that we've been conditioned to believe that information was the way to go. So white collar jobs, but there will be still white collar jobs. Like I don't think that humanoid could ever take the job of a lawyer. I don't think that they could ever take the job of, a great surgeon to have a conversation with that person, even though I think there's going to be more of a merging between man and machine before they completely take over. But I think what we need to be doing, just to add a practical flavor to this segment, is we need to be talking to our kids about looking forward to this thing. Okay, don't think about what the job market looks like today. Think about how it could evolve and completely change in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Where is the ball going? Not where the ball is. And so to your point, if I'm thinking about having children at this age, if I'm, in my 20s and 30s, I'm thinking about sending my kids to learn how to do something with their hands. That's higher level thinking, where you have to have a level of intelligence, where you have to be able to diagnose a problem dynamically and right on the spot. You can't just teach somebody how to do that. You've got to take time to learn from first principles how that particular area works. Like, for example, if I want to have a child who becomes a mechanic, I can have other mechanical instruments at my shop and I go hire them, but I'm the one that provides the service. I'm the one that provides the oversight. If I want to be a plumber, I've got to be able to understand how to diagnose different elements within, the plumbing systems and all of those. Electricians, same thing. And so I think that we've got to be very intentional about how we teach our children how to look for jobs, because the jobs that exist today won't even be around. Like people that are in computer science, in 4 years, their degree is obsolete. So we've got to really start thinking about that. And the last point that I'll make is that now with technology growing and proliferating, the rate at which change takes place is much more significant, because now instead of a job being replaced or a major being obsolete every 4 years, now it's going to be every 2 years. Eventually it'll be every year. So I believe that the spoils will go towards people that are forward thinking, that understand concepts globally from first principles, where they can identify where the trends are heading. So I'm, like I said, very, very interested, but also concerned, because, we've talked about this in the past, where fewer and fewer jobs will be available for people to do. And I'm just hoping that other types of ways to earn income will begin to emerge and grow and flourish. So,
interestingly enough, the U.S. plumbing industry is on pace to reach $169.8 billion in 2025. That's up 3.2% over the past 5 years. It just goes on and on for all of these. It's technology, workforce, electrician, every single one of these. It's crazy. It's just crazy to me if you look at the numbers. For electrician, the demand is there. And this is where I don't buy into the BS of, it's getting a little sideways here, but this is where I don't buy into. We talked about this. This is where I don't buy into the BS of, And I've seen this, by the way. I don't know if you've seen it in California, but I have definitely seen it in Texas. And what I mean by that is that stuff is not being done as fast, like construction projects and stuff like that. Stuff's a little bit slower. I'm sure you're seeing that in California. I see it a lot in Texas. I don't care. And because the reason I don't care is because there's temporary pain to cut the fat. And what I mean by that is illegal immigration and things like that, where people, oh my God, if you deport these people, no one's going to do the job anymore. You're right. But that allows people to get retrained on it. For example, construction industry. We all know construction industry is dominated by immigrant workers that are undocumented, right? Majority. You can look at a lot of that study. But that's where you start to see that problem in America, where, again, we told everybody to go to school and get this white-collar degree in computer information sciences and political science and like my favorite person in New York, which I think is tanking now. It's great. I love it. He's not trending as hot as he was a couple weeks ago. I'm going to go study African studies and then become a mayor. Like, really? Like that just shows you how putrefied the government is, right? Because the government had a hand in pushing that crap. And that's why you see a labor shortage in America. That's why there's not people that, Americans don't want the jobs. No, it's not that they don't want the jobs. I think, in my opinion, it's that because I remember the rhetoric. I remember the rhetoric starting as soon as I was in 8th grade. The rhetoric was, what are you going to do for school? You got to meet your counselor. What degree are you going to get? What job are you going to get? I said, I'm going in IT. I'm going to become a trade. They're like, that's not the way to do it. So I remember that agenda. And that was back in like 95, 96. So we forced ourselves into this situation by promoting this. And now we've left these kids high and dry with debt. And the only way to save them is, don't worry, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive the debt. We're just teaching people that we don't have to pay debt. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So now they're stuck with a degree they can't use in a job market that doesn't exist with a debt that hopefully someone like you and I is going to pay for.
Yeah.
Can I get my honorary degree? If I pay off a student loan for someone, can I get the degree? Can I get it? Can I get a pay for play, please?
So I think that job markets are a natural byproduct of capitalism. And I believe that capitalism is really a matter of finding out the cheapest way to create production. And if you can get somebody if you can find a way to pay that person $5 an hour versus $20 an hour, then capitalists will take advantage of that. And I think that because the market allowed a large, robust workforce south of the border to fill that void, then that was the impetus. So I would argue that it wasn't politically motivated. I think that it was economically motivated through capitalism. And I'm saying that anytime you have a system where people can get exploited and increase profits in a capitalistic system, that's what will happen. Now, if you hear me saying that, you might suggest that I'm not a capitalist. No, I'm a capitalist. However, that's why it's so imperative to make sure that in a system where you have opportunities to pursue different forms of employment bring different levels of value to the marketplace. There's always going to be a need for people to hold up the stop sign to walk the kids across the crosswalk. However, because you can be replaced like that, then they don't deserve, or they don't create a need to have a high value placed on their wages. Now, you talked about construction and you talked about migrant workers. If I can pay, if there are no longer migrant workers available to create those jobs, one of two things are going to happen. The home prices are going to skyrocket, or we're going to find a way to create different machines to replace them to do that work. And while we'll have to pay for the capital up front, over time, the cost to build that house can go down, or we may find out ways to pre-manufacture them. Like, for example, there's a company called Boxable out there where they prefabricate the homes You can put a home there on a piece of property within days as opposed to months. Now, of course, it doesn't have the same level of complexity that a custom built home has and all of those things, but there's always ways to shift how to create different goods and services. So I think that it's a byproduct of economics, not politics.
Let me pose this question then. I think then Ross Perot was right.
Okay.
Ross Perot was vehemently against NAFTA, and his words are proven right in today's world. Here's why. And I'm going to quote right now. Ross Perot argued NAFTA would cause a giant sucking of American jobs moving to Mexico where labor was cheaper. We did not have this problem pre-NAFTA. NAFTA comes in, bam, kills that manufacturing market in America. We have had such a series of political missteps for political gain to help other people, powers that be, corporate greed, whatever you want to call it, corporate cronyism. Look, cronyism exists in capitalism, especially when the players, these politicians that don't have term limits, get in there as a broke, I was going to say a bad word, as a broke you-know-what, and come out a millionaire, right? Because they made these deals. And then you let China into the World Trade Organization and bam, that opens that market. So it's been a series of anti-pro-global movements by whoever was in charge at that time to put this, to transition America away from it. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be in a tinfoil hat or a conspiracy theorist, but you just got to look at that and go, this guy, Ross Perot, said it. It's going to create a massive labor disruption in America. Has it not? I know, see, hindsight's 2020, and I know we can't go back and change it, but I wish we could go back and rerun the model and say, can we run the model again and see if we don't implement NAFTA and see what happened? And I bet you, if we didn't do NAFTA, we would not be talking the same language today.
So as you talk about that, I remember being in college when the North American Free Trade Agreement came up, and we studied that because I was in economics.
You said that so eloquently, Len. Like, can you say it one more time? You said the North American Free Trade Agreement. Because I
had to study it, man. I had to study it I had to study the tenets of it. And then we even had debates. And so one of our assignments was so one person had to debate for it, and then that same person had to debate against it. And so what that helped us to do is to really understand both sides of the argument for NAFTA. And so to me, we have 20 plus years of actual data to substantiate if it was a good policy or not. And I think that if you look back, Ross Perot was right because there weren't any guardrails placed on manufacturing and keeping manufacturing jobs here in America. And then also there were no guardrails with regard to labor. And so I think that if there were some way to protect labor and manufacturing, I think free trade, I think global trade is necessary, because when you look at a world as the stage for an economy, the NAFTA really lifted. The quality of life that people have today is better than it's ever been worldwide. And so one of the reasons why that is because of global trade. And so when you have highly effective manufacturing companies and manufacturing sectors. Go ahead. It has gotten better overall, but I want to say it's gotten better overall for those countries that got the labor versus America. Okay. So it shifted in America, but remember, because we talked about this before, it just shifted from manufacturing to service. So so when you look at the per capita income of Americans and all of those things, it's been fairly stable. Cost of living has gone up. So our quality of living for sure has gone down. But I think that's a byproduct of other factors that we could have a conversation about. But what I'm talking about specifically with the North American Free Trade Agreement is that it's been good for the global economy, and the common everyday person everywhere has benefited from it. Also, people in America have benefited from it. And so when you look at the cost to be able to trade goods across different borders, the lower those costs are, it makes it better for everybody. However, having said that, to your point, I think there needs to be certain ways to help different places achieve in spite of those agreements. For example, Australia doesn't sell any of its its produce across the borders. They make sure that the produce and the livestock they produce stays in house. And I think we should do the same thing with labor. And because then that way, because we have more money to pay offshore people, we need to be able to make sure that we take steps to keep those jobs here in America.
I think the only thing the global economy cares about is whether or not America can continue to pay the bill. I don't think it cares about the well-being. Come on.
No. Stop it, Chris.
I think you could send a courtesy letter to the estimated 700,000 people that have lost their jobs since NAFTA came out about. And maybe the 2 or 3x more jobs that could have been created as a result of NAFTA not being in part that we never saw a chance to ever happen in America because we had a NAFTA agreement and then a China World Trade Agreement entry. I just don't think the world has America's best interest in mind. And I think that if you look at the way that most countries or most people look at America, to me, it's like, or at least what the media portrays the rest of the world looks at America like, I don't think they care. I don't think China cares about America other than how much it can take from it.
So what percentage of your goods in your home come from China, would you guess? What would you guess?
Ridiculously too much. And I hate it because look, I remember a time where Sam Walton had the Made in America challenge. And we got, I challenge you, come to Walmart. You're going to see almost everything is made in America, right? You can't go to Walmart now and ever find anything made in America today.
That's right. And that's the point.
And
if you had everything in your house made in America, how much more would you spend for it? Because if the amount that you get paid in labor stays the same and the cost of goods and services go up, then the relative wealth you have goes down, and therefore the quality of life you have goes down. And so because other people are getting paid $2 an hour and $10 a day, you can buy the stuff you enjoy and have the lifestyle you have because somebody paid less for it. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's how it is. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, hey, I want to pay, because even with our own meats, government supplements that, chicken and beef would be 3 and 4 and 5x more if the government didn't supplement the cost of that. And so instead of paying $3.99, you're paying $12, $13, $14 per pound for meat. And so every rule and policy has an effect. And to your point with the North American Free Trade Agreement, jobs were lost. That's an effect. But the benefit that you get to enjoy is the ability to be able to buy more stuff.
I don't get it. My mom and dad bought a Bronco 2, Eddie Bauer, and a Corvette before NAFTA, and they didn't have a problem doing that. So I don't understand how NAFTA helped them. And by the way, my mom and dad both followed that: go to school, get a degree, serve the military, which my dad did. And my mom worked for Lockheed Martin, and both of them were college educated. But again, they're both baby boomers, but again, that's a totally different economic time before NAFTA, before World Trade. So I think that your argument's good, but I think that you can't make that argument today because you don't know what those prices would have been like had we not implemented that. I argue that we wouldn't have exorbitant prices because we have so much economic productivity and so much surplus that a basic law, supply and demand, would regulate that price down. I don't think because when I hear that, it just kind of to me sounds like the championing the cause of the government, getting involved. And anytime the government does anything, look, if the government was in charge of running the Sahara Desert, they would run out of sand. They would. They would, because anytime the government comes in,
No
it
disagreement
sucks.
there, brother.
It
No
sucks.
disagreement
It
there.
sucks. We talked about this, Len. How awesome is it to go to the DMV? It's horrible, right?
Terrible. Terrible.
It's terrible dealing with any government thing.
Okay,
I mean, look at
I agree. Though there's okay, but I understand, and I know we need to move on. There's so many factors. Like, to me, you talked about the lifestyle your parents had. That's the baby boomer generation. I believe the reason why they had the lifestyle they had was not because of trade, was not because of labor, is because of assets and currency. And once in 1971, when the United States went off the gold standard for a time being, just for a little while, that's when the dollar began to become debased. And every economic downfall that every major empire has is because their economy goes down, the prices go up, people began to have civil unrest, and trust erodes. That is the definition of a downside. And we see that's what's happening within our economy. And so what happens is when the certain factors begin to happen, like in my case, I'm arguing that when we went away from the gold standard, we as a society have to find someone or something to hate, someone or something to distrust. And in our case, we talk about other people coming to the country and the government and what they're doing. And there is truth and validity to that. But the problem is that we're looking at the wrong variable. I believe that if we were able to get back to a gold standard where now you don't have these massive price fluctuations, now because asset prices would remain fairly stable. But when you can print money at will, there's no free lunch. And that's the reason why the quality of life goes down. But then it's so easy to blame somebody else. That's the danger of it, Chris. That's the issue that I have with your argument.
Right, but we've been headed towards the gold standard being abolished since the onset of the Fed, right? Central banking, because that was a precursor to it. Because you don't really have fiat banking anymore. You have made up banking now. Banks create money out of nowhere. Banks you notice the language, right? Banks banks credit your account. They don't deposit in your account. They credit. And one thing I know is in law, the nuance of the language is the most important thing. How it is said is everything in law. So when you look at banking, they know, oh, Len, your account's been credited today. Not, hey, we deposited $4,000. When the bank loans you money, they fund you or they credit you. They don't deposit the money. They make it up. That money came from nowhere. So to me, it's all fiat currency at this point. And that's why I'm such a big fan of cryptocurrencies and blockchain and all of that, because I think that that's more of a free market currency and less manipulative. And look, if the government's opposed to it and Visa and MasterCard are opposed to it and the big banks are opposed to it, then you know it's good.
Yes.
Because it hurts their bottom line.
Yes, that's right. And I think that as the generations begin to shift, the younger generation is going to see more than ever that those different types of non-traditional currencies are going to become more and more a part of their everyday living. And I think, I want to talk and shift gears and talk about the generational rift, right? Because there's this divide that's really at a fever pitch. And so when you talk about boomers versus Gen Z, that generational divide is really this whole friction that's being caused because, the values are starting to become split, and the different ways in which boomers versus Gen Z looks at the world is a lot different. And you've got this tension between young and old. And, we're just watching this deeper fracture that's taking place. And I think, as I look at my son and my kids and how bitter they are, because, you could buy a house like we talked about in other episodes for, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000, $200,000 was a lot of money. Now that's a down payment. And so even the idea of buying a home and using it as one of the stores of wealth like other generations did, that's becoming a thing of the past. And so I wanted to get your thoughts and your take about this divide between the boomers and Gen Z. And let's kind of dig a little deep in and talk about that.
Well, you said earlier that the baby boomers inherited or were successful because of different economic times, right? Right. Well, the baby boomers inherited a great manufacturing, strong IP economy post World War II from the greatest generation. And then the baby boomers were selfish, and all they did was just suck that economy dry and lead it into where we're at right now. I mean, there's a cliche that's now been formed. And the cliche is this. Gen X says it's all about money. Millennials say, where is the money? And Gen Z goes, what is money? Right? Because they have none. Right? So, and it's true. Because the baby boomers, look, we talk, oh, the baby boomers are so great. No! The baby boomers have some nerve because they should be looking at this right now and going, what? The greatest generation left us an opportunity to have so much success easily, right? And now they don't even think twice to go, well, what are we leaving for our kids, right? Because you have the Pelosi's, Schumers, Nadlers, all these guys, Bidens, get the hell out of office already. Give it to us. That's why I love when I see J.D. Vance and Hegseth and Power, because I'm like, please, can we please have somebody that's not senile and isn't making $1 billion every day off of insider stock trades? Baby boomers, right? So to me, I'm like, I know I'm a little high strung today.
You sound mad. You sound mad, Chris.
Because I'm just like, how does nobody see this? How does nobody see these people? Right? And here's the reality behind the baby boomers, right? That I think, right? And I was never like this, by the way. I used to champion this. Both my parents are baby boomers, 47 and 48, born in 1947 and 48, respectively, right? My mom and dad bought their house in California, in Rancho Penasquitos, California, for $81,000 in 1978, Len. $81,000. You know what that property's worth today? That house is worth today? $1.4 million. How the hell am I going to buy that property if I'm a Gen Z or millennial? And albeit, how am I going to buy it if that baby boomer is still living in that house? Because one thing you can tell you is these baby boomers, they're not letting go of their houses. They're not selling their houses. They're not getting rid of them. Sometimes they have 3 or 4 of them, right? 5 of them, right? And they got these big SUVs, these big cars, these big toys. You know, everybody said, oh, these young generations are so materialistic and all this. No, baby boomers are. Baby boomers are materialistic. I see it all the time. You see baby boomers driving. What business does a baby boomer, 75, 78 years old, driving a Corvette or a Mustang or a muscle car or any of that crap right now? They should be in the Waymo taxi, right? They should be. Now, I'm not saying you should impede on their freedoms, but the baby boomers have done a very poor job of giving the next generation, number one, the baton, because they don't want to let go of it. They just don't. They're stubborn, self-centered. They don't want to let go of that baton. They don't. They just don't want to give the power up, right? They're staying employed, all of these things. And then number 2, they did a very good job of making sure they were good, but they didn't do a very good job of passing it on and paying it forward to the next generation that's going to inherit all their bad decisions. All of them. All their bad decisions. We inherit all of them. So now we got to, number 1, figure out how to pay for them, because they don't want to pay for a dime. And then we also have to figure out how to clean up the mess that they left us in, because it's a lot of their fault to deal with it. They've been running the country for the last 30, 40 years. Not me, not you. They have. Look at politics. Look at businesses. Look at all these guys, right? They're the ones that have put America largely in this position. And then when you see it on the street, you could see it. And that's why you said it, your children, you know, respectively, what, 20, mid-20s, late 20s, right?
26, 28.
They're bitter. Why are they bitter? Why are they bitter? Like, think about it this way, perspective this way. I bought my first house when I was 21, okay? And luckily, I had a good job. I studied computers. I was a hobby of mine. I turned it into a job. and I wanted to own a home. And I bought it at a time where luckily it was a fraud system, and anybody could get, not to say anybody could buy a house, right? But it was during that era where it was banks were just rubber
stated
stamped,
income,
right?
stated assets.
Yeah. I mean, I had 3 stated income loans at one point, right? Granted, I was in a position to handle that debt, to service that debt. Enough of that being said, the interesting point is that we are now in a position where people cannot afford to do this stuff. And the reason for that is because we've completely manipulated the system, and we've completely defrauded the system, and we've completely raped the system, and we've lopsided it to one generation. And that's why the greatest wealth transfer is happening. To who? To who? There's no wealth to be transferred anywhere. It's fake. So to me, I just don't see it. I don't understand how the baby boomers can continue to be held in such high esteem when they've left us in this mess and they've given us no solutions to get out of it. So,
okay,
where do you go?
I think you are definitely bitter, and I understand your perspective when you look at the difficulties that Gen Zs and younger millennials are having economically. I think to blame the baby boomers is a little bit short-sighted. And here's what I mean by that. I think that the American cultural ethic and the American belief and ethos is pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's rugged individualism. It's find a way to go from rags to riches and take care of yourself. And I think what's been lost in that message is the idea of thinking more collectively and thinking more broadly about others besides yourself. And I think that when you talk about the inheritance that baby boomers are not providing for their children, I think it's also a byproduct of the economic woes that has happened that's unprecedented. When you look at the quote unquote greatest generation, and then you look at the baby boomers, the question is how did those generations take place? What were some of the factors and variables that created that? Well, the greatest generation was created really during wartime. What was going on during wartime? You had defense. You had companies like McDonnell Douglas and companies like Lockheed Martin building all of these different airplanes and warships and all of these things. So what does that do? Well, you've got to have materials to do that. So people had to mine the materials. People had to manufacture the raw materials and turn it into a ship or a plane. And so then you also had to have the people that build those materials. And you had the people that delivered those materials, people that sold those materials. And so war has been one of the biggest reasons why the United States has become a global superpower. And so the baby boomers and the generation before that was a real byproduct of that. And so then over time, technology began to rise. And so fewer people could be more productive. And so therefore the need for as many workers, you don't have these big factory assembly lines making planes and trains and automobiles like you had before. So now money that went to their hands, talking about the greatest generation and the baby boomers, that's a different financial and economic context. And so because then you had the New Deal that happened, where that was signed. And then, this whole idea of Social Security became a factor. But the thing about Social Security is that Social Security was offered for people that was age 65, but life expectancy was somewhere around 62 at that point. And so now you've got this technology that allows people to live longer. And so now more people are starting to take money away from the Social Security system because they're living longer. It was never that fund was never created with the intention of people living on Social Security for 10, 15, 20 years, and the complete number of people that would take out of that system versus a number of people putting into that system. So you have these baby boomers who are, somewhere around 80 million strong. And then you've got the Gen Xers, which is half of that number. And then you've got Gen Z, which is somewhere around 70 to 75 million. And so now you've got these ebbs and flows in the population growth. And because of that, it's creating these massive inequalities, as it relates to economic prosperity. And that's the reason why the younger generation's feeling the brunt of it, because we haven't created an economic context for them to prosper and grow because of efficiencies. And so we've almost become a prisoner or a victim of our own success. And unless we find a way to really get that next generation involved in our economic prosperity, this country is going to have a massive, massive fall economically. And I'm very, very concerned about the next generation after Gen Z. And so you're right to be bitter. I understand where it comes from, but I think to blame them, they're just byproducts of not having the ability to have foresight, because they've been taught to just think about themselves. And that's why China is probably going to be the next superpower that takes over. And I hate to say that, but that's really what's happening. That's where we're headed as a society.
So if the captain of the ship crashes, if the ship crashes, whose fault is it? It's the captain of the ship, right?
Captain. Yeah.
Absolutely. The baby boomers have been the captain of the ship.
Okay. I understand that. I think that's a good argument, but the captain that drove their ship didn't teach them, and they just happened to be in a good situation. They were the benefactors of great circumstances.
Okay. So look at it this way. Baby boomers, 74% of baby boomers own homes. Okay. 74%, right? And 37% of all home ownership nationwide is baby boomers, despite they being only 20% of the population. Mm-hmm. So clearly there's something going on here, right? And that all comes down to the fact that these baby boomers were at the captain of the ship when all these sweeping changes were made in America through the 70s, through the 80s, and through the 90s. And now we've arrived at ourselves at this time right now where we've got all these bad policy decisions that have been made over the last last few decades, and we're paying the price for that. We're paying the price for NAFTA. We're paying the price for world trade agreements that are bad. We're paying the price for not looking at tariffs more closely. We're paying the price for all of these things, and what we've seen is a massive amount of wealth get repatriated to other countries, manufacturing, all the goodies, everything that's happened as a result has gone to these baby boomers, and they have allowed this fleecing to happen. And they didn't care about it because they already owned their homes. They already had their pensions. They already had all their stockpiles that they had. They don't care because they just don't. And they are leaving us not with a bad situation, with a horrible situation. And that's okay, because I myself, I'm not bitter with it. For me, I'm just like, how dare you? Because you got handed a great opportunity, and then you don't even have the audacity to say, you know what, guys, we're sorry, we'll give you a better opportunity. Like, have you actually tried to have a conversation with a baby boomer about anything sensible? Like, it is the most one-sided conversation. Like, it's just crazy to me how that generation thinks. And it's just, to me, it's like, I think that they completely have lost touch, and you can see it in the political leaders. When you look at political leaders today, most of them are baby boomers, and most of them are out of touch. Like, for example, if I was to ask my 6-year-old daughter to draw me a picture of a politician, they'd probably draw me a pale, stale white man. That's what they'd draw me. That's what she'd draw me, because that's what most people think. Or a witch of a woman. And I'm sorry if I insulted anybody out there, but realistically, that's what they are. I mean, they are. They're not nice. They're not polite. They're not caring. None of them. And by the way, I have baby boomer parents, right? But to me, it's like, what has happened so badly to this generation that they could be so self-centered and so unapologetic about what condition they're leaving not just the country but the world in. So that's kind of just my biggest gripe.
What would you suggest as a solution to, moving forward? If you could just, sprinkle some pixie dust on the entire baby boomer generation, do you have any suggestions about how we can make it better?
Well, I was just going to say before you said that point, which is a great point, Len. I love your question on that. I love the situation we're in because I'm a capitalist and I'm an opportunist and I'm an entrepreneur and I'm going to find out a way to solve the problem. And whoever figures out how to solve the most problems and the biggest problems makes the most money. So to me, I like it. So I'm like, bring it on, baby. Let's do this, right? Come on, right? Because I can tell you at this, I'm not really worried about the next generation, Len. Like you said, I'm worried about the next generation coming up to Gen Z because I know most of my kids are that next generation. Or what is it, Gen Alpha or whatever, right? I think it's called Gen Alpha, right? I think it's the next generation.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I will tell you while you're looking that up that I am excited for Gen Alpha because I live with a bunch of Gen Alpha kids. My youngest is 6 and my oldest is 19. I think my oldest is considered a Xennial. Like she's like right in the middle of the Xennial. Like she's hard. But having said that, the young Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, I'm excited for them because their way of thinking is so much better than Gen Z and even millennial thinking. Mm-hmm. They are so stoic, they're so forward thinking, but at the same time they're progressive and forward thinking, but they have conservative base. They look at people like Joe Biden, they look at people like Pelosi, and they go, those people are absolutely insane. Right? That's what they say. This is my kids saying this. I say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Insane, right? I think, well, that's a pretty strong word, right? But they're not lazy. They're very driven, and they're tech savvy. And I think this generation is going to be at the tip of the spear, and there's going to be a renaissance in America like you've never seen before. Short term, what my solution is, I'm a big fan of what Trump's doing with the tariffs. I know you and I disagree with that. But trade volume is massively up since the beginning of the year. Trillions of dollars. Let me see. Hold on.
Telling you, look at the actual numbers because one thing that you've been bashing on the left a lot this conversation, and I've been quiet.
Index trading, January 25 saw a total trading volume of $54 trillion with an average daily volume of 20.3% year over year.
Okay.
In the options market activity. So to see this,
but that doesn't speak to necessarily the level of success because oftentimes when the value of that currency that's being traded goes down, you need more of it. So I'm really interested to see what's the quality of life look like for the average everyday American, because one thing is that, you just mentioned index and most people don't look at that as, okay, how does that impact my gas prices? How does that impact the cost of my food? How does that impact the cost of the goods and services that I have to buy to keep my house afloat? And unfortunately,
I can tell you, I can tell you, Len, gas is for 93 in Texas is $2.43 a gallon.
Okay. Talk about food and going to and things like that. Talk about that.
Perfect. I can take myself, my wife, and my 6 children to In-N-Out for less than $100.
And compare that to 5 years ago.
I can't give you a price of it 5 years ago, but to me, I can give you this. In California, it was $125 for the same order.
But that's state to state, and I understand where you're going with that argument.
Housing prices.
What I'm saying that the overall price of goods and services, if you index that, the computer priced index, the CPI, countrywide has significantly gone up. And the reason why I bring that point up is because it's not one side versus the other. It's both. They're both contributing to the demise of our economy. Both sides are. And so when you look at all of the politicians that have been in office over and over, they're not listening to their constituents. They're not listening to the local folks talking about the concerns they have. And so I agree that politicians are a problem, but it's not just the left. It's both sides, bro. You can't tell.
You know what I wish would happen? You know how you go into like a Catholic home or Christian, or mostly a Catholic home, and you see like the Last Supper? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Or a crucifix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every baby boomer should have a shrine of Ronald Reagan in their house, because if without Ronald Reagan doing what he did in the 80s and getting us out of the mess that look how fast Jimmy Carter plummeted this country, right? Just like, right? And then Ronald Reagan comes in and he says, look, guys, it's going to be rough. It's going to be hard. It's going to be terrible. We're going to make these changes. You're not going to like it. It's going to be a lot of pain. However, let me tell you something. It's morning again. It's morning again. The night is over. And I think what you're seeing here is, and obviously you can't compare apples to apples because it's different problems, different economic times.
Yeah, because housing interest rates during his tenure was upwards of 18, 19%.
Well, he inherited that from Jimmy Carter. I mean, you inherited those higher interest rates, but ultimately what happened was time changes, and as a result, it takes time, right? Like, for example, you can't lose 100 pounds in 2 weeks, right? It's going to take you a year probably to lose that weight if you're on an aggressive protocol. However, by the end of his term, Bill Clinton comes in office, and what happens? Bam! The country is on fire. You have a small little blip in the early 90s, but the country is on fire all throughout the 90s. Until what happens? The crony capitalism comes in again, and manipulation. And oddly enough, it all happens in California. Enron, MCI, all that crap that happened, the tech bubble, it all happens in California for some reason, right? For some reason. But Clinton inherits the massive productivity value that Clinton creates, or that Reagan creates. Clinton was a good steward of that throughout the 90s, right? And then you have, Bush comes in, and then Obama trashes it. Right, and Bush, I was not a fan. I'm not a fan of Bush.
He did not do well in the economy, bro.
Unnecessary wars. The biggest gift that Bush got was 9/11. That's what created his popularity. That's what created his. Again, to your point, Len, which you're correct. Wars are very profitable for countries that win them, and very profitable for countries that are involved in them. Bush rode the coattails of 9/11 and all the endless Iraq, Middle Eastern wars that we're still in. Right, that's the cronyism that happened. And I think that's right where we're at right now again with Trump. You may not like it. It is painful. It's ugly. It's going to be shitty. But I can promise you whoever inherits it after him is going to have such an easier time. Because to the point of so many people, and I'm not bashing on the left or anything, but everyone on the left unanimously said, oh my God, Trump is the enemy of democracy and he's going to have a recession on day one and all this thing, just like they said in his first term. I think it was, whoever it was, right? He said it. Oh my God, we're going to be in war and he's going to launch a nuclear war. None of it happened.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I agree from the standpoint that the left is really bad about being anti-Trump because they don't have a pro message. 100% agree with that. I don't believe that the first 200 days that Trump has been in office is going to turn out 4 years of prosperity. The way things are going right now, I think the erosion of trust within, see what you're thinking about is purely the economic benefits that Trump is creating because you look at the world through a Republican lens. And I think the challenge with that is that along with the economic prosperity that policies have created for a small number of people, larger numbers of people are not feeling the positive impact of that. And there's been more distrust. His ratings are worse this term than they were the first term in terms of likability, acceptance, trust, and all of those things. And so when you look at those factors and you look at the erosion of trust from the different sides and the sides becoming more and more polar opposites, I think the rhetoric that he spews is creating a tinderbox, because when he talks about, for example, in Washington, D.C., and there's these roving thugs and they're roaming the street and they'll slit your throats and all, like, using rhetoric like that from the position of the presidency is a problem, because now you're creating seeds of hatred using your words. And I think that he's got to temper it down a bit, because the words that he uses have power, and people who have power using it ineffectively or using it for the wrong purposes to promote an agenda, dehumanizing groups of people, that's going to create more problems in the future. And so you could have great short-term numbers for tariffs and all of those things, but if the country is hating each other from within inside, there's not going to be a country to prosper. It's just going to continue to erode. And if he continues down the path that he's going down, I fear for what year 2, 3, and 4 will look like.
I don't think he's the only one guilty of rhetoric. And I mean, you have Maxine Waters, kick them while they're down.
Yeah, but she's not a president. She's not a president.
It doesn't matter, though.
Okay, but
wait a minute, hold on.
That's like,
but Joe Biden said the same thing. He's a thug, and people are thugs. And Joe Biden said the same rhetoric too. They all say the same rhetoric.
You can't compare the type of rhetoric. Now, again, I'm not a Biden fan, but I'm saying you cannot compare the rhetoric that Trump has versus the rhetoric that Biden has. Those two aren't even the same. Now, if you bring in a firebrand like, I'm saying what I see with my own eyes.
He's been so vilified for so long. The press is so negative about it. He's been vilified up way, sideways, down ways. I agree with that. Any such way.
I agree with that. I am telling you, listen, Chris, I am telling you that I agree with you, the fact that he has been vilified, and a lot of times, media's, on the left, like the MSNBCs and the CNNs, they don't find anything positive to say about him. In our conversations, I'm telling you that I want him to be successful. I want him to have success. I've said that before. So I'm not going to look at everything he does through the lens of saying that everything he does is bad. I am telling you that what I see with my own eyes, I'm only speaking for me. What I see with my own eyes is that the rhetoric he spews is problematic. The rhetoric that he spews, it doesn't build bridges, it builds silos. And I think that that's a problem given where we are right now as a country. When you look at what happens when the economic system starts to erode and prices go up, people are looking for reasons to point the finger, to cast blame. And what will happen is that if this rhetoric continues to go up and it continues to get more and more widespread, people begin to adopt these views. And I'm saying that's what I see with my own eyes. I think I like the fact, okay, let me talk positively about him. I like the fact that he doesn't care what people think. I like the fact that he speaks his mind from the standpoint of getting what he wants when he's talking to other leaders. I like the fact that he doesn't look at tradition and say, I have to be a certain way. But what I don't like is when he pits groups of people against each other, and when he pits one party against the other. I think that we need to have a president, especially now more than ever, that's a unifying president between the left and the right. And like I said, I'm independent, so I don't have a dog in the fight for the right or the left. Neither of them are my party. But when I look at things, that's why I look at the issues and I look at the individual. And what I see with this individual, he has a golden opportunity to take a country that's going in a bad direction economically and to use the people within it to help guide the economic prosperity to allow us to be number one again. Even though we're number one on paper, we're not the fastest growing economy, not even close. When you look at what China's doing and how they're growing compared to how America's growing, it's just a matter of time. We're in decline. And so we need to be able to take time to sit back and say, okay, what can we do to change the trajectory? And the way we change the trajectory is to work together. And I'll close with this, is that in Fantastic Four, and I was watching it yesterday, there was an existential threat to the world. And what they had to do is all the countries had to come together to work hand in hand to stop this existential threat from taking place, from taking over and ruling the world. And when we look at the country, we're being compromised by various existential threats. When you look at China, when you look at India, when you look at other countries that are rising and being in a position to take over, we need to come together and unite. We can't continue to thrive divided. And I just think that a lot of what's being said on both sides of the aisle, they need to tone it down a little bit, and they need to think about more ways to come together. And that's why I like these conversations that you and I have, because, again, you and I disagree on so many different things, but at the same time, we understand that there's value in listening. Like when you talk, even though I may disagree with a lot of your points, I listen to hear what you have to say. And I'm not trying to create a counter argument. I'm trying to look at the world through your lens while you're talking to get an understanding of why you see the world the way you do. And just like this entire time, you haven't jumped in. You haven't tried to cut me off. You've listened. And I think more dialogue needs to happen that way.
I totally agree. And here's my closing on that, and we can transition off this because we're talking about this guy way too much. The best thing about this is that either of us are part of the two-party system. You're not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. You're an independent. I'm a libertarian, right? So both of us are rooted in those philosophies respectively. I just think that I don't look at it as what's right and wrong. I look at it right now as what's most effective, to the point of we got to get out of the situation we're in right now. And also to your point, 200 days. 200 days is not enough to change the course in which he inherited. He inherited a crap show. We all know that. I mean, the numbers were horrible when he got into office, right? And the numbers were great when Biden got into it. Granted, there was some COVID effect going on and all that stuff, right? But to the point is that he is and was the most qualified candidate on that ticket during that season. There's no way. Kamala couldn't even get herself out of a paper bag. This is the most manufactured, propped up candidate. We don't even need to talk about that, right? I mean, she blew through over $1 billion, right? That's waste. And now Gavin Newsom's paying for her security detail that she doesn't even need, and we're going to make a big deal out of it. And again, that lends you to baby boomer syndrome. What does she need it for, right? I don't want to get on that subject or anything, but you're absolutely right, Ren. We need to turn this around. Now, why is he so brash, and why is he so much like that? Number one, he's always been like that. But number two, I think that's the way the world stage is right now. I mean, you've got aggressors like Putin. You've got aggressors like Iran. You've got aggressors like China. You've got aggressors all over the world, and these guys aren't nice. They are just not nice. And I think that you need someone like that right now with that attitude and that brashness to go in and say, no, guys, bang, 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 spank, spank, spank. And I think that's what he's doing. Now, is it as much as the way we've talked about this? Would I like more polish and eloquency? Yes, I would. Would I like more of that stuff? Because I am that way. I don't want to come out there. But at the same time, I think he's the most effective person for the job given the current situation and climate. I would prefer to have someone like a J.D. Vance as president, just simply because I like that he's younger. I like his attitude. I like the smarts. I like he has the polish without the a-hole attitude and the self-centeredness. We can't forget here, Trump is a baby boomer too. Okay, so right, he's got that weirdness in him. So he's got that baby boomer wiring. So you got to look at, I think, all those perspectives. Do I think he's the best man for the job right now? Still, yes. Do I agree with everything? No. I think that one of us will have a very big smile in 2 or 3 years when we see the breadth of the domain, and I just can't wait to see that because the proof is always in the pudding. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to make a change. We absolutely do. Because at the end of the day, no one in the rest of the world has the fundamental core values that American culture, America's system and culture has. And that's what scares me the most, because again, the general operating system in America is based on loosely, I mean, obviously on what freedoms and perceptions you have. I want to have a freedom and economic, but I think he's the best person for the job at this point. Do I agree with everything? No. Do I agree with anybody else put in that position? No. And given the current election cycle, there was nobody that was going to be electable at that point that could do better than he's doing, or could do better than what he's going to do, I think, potentially. So that's my last bow on that one.
Time will tell all, and only thing that we know is that time will tell. And so, we'll see. We'll see what happens. So, hey, Chris, it's been a great conversation. I know we had another topic on the docket, but I know it's getting late in the day. So we'll table that till next time, because I'm looking forward to having that conversation.
Yes. And, yes.
For sure. So we'll table that till next week. Listen, it's been great. I hope that all of you that have been watching has had an opportunity to get some value from different perspectives. And I hope that you take this information, have different conversations with people. If you like what you heard, give us a like, subscribe, put a bell on it so you can get notified every single time. And then also make sure that you have conversations with people that you don't agree with all the time, so you can see perspectives through other people's eyes. You can ultimately end up agreeing to disagree, but also take time to hear their perspective. So with that being said, take care, everybody. Until next time.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.